Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aaron Blade, and I'm the editor, creator, and producer of what you're watching right now, Blade Talk. If you are new here, welcome, and you find this presentation helpful, informative, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Do me an even greater favor and subscribe to my channel. I always appreciate all the support that I am given. So, it is that time again. The time for you, my beautiful viewers, subscribers, to ask me 5 questions and I answer to the best of my ability. Let's jump right in. All right, as I said, we're gonna jump right in. All right. Let's start with the first question. Since you were born Jewish, like you said in other videos, why did you have to go through a conversion? Unless I'm not understanding something. Thanks. So, of course, I'll explain to my newer viewers and subscribers my history. Okay? So, it all started with my great-grandmother on my mother's side. Okay, her name was Ruth. She was from Germany and was Jewish. Right? She had my grandmother December 24th, 1924. Okay, when my grandmother turned 9 years old, they fled from Germany to Poland. Okay, obviously, the anti-Semitism was quickly rising, right? They stayed there until the Nazis invaded in September 1939, at which time they migrated from Poland to the United States, mainly the Midwest. Okay, my grandmother had 10 children. Yes, you heard me correctly. 10 children. And of those 10 children, my mom is the baby. Okay. My grandmother attended Beth Yehuda in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Okay. Under Rabbi Twerksky. All right. Then, of course, my mother was born in 1968. Okay. Yes, my grandmother had my mother at 43 years old, if you're keeping up with the math. Okay. My mother left for the military at the age of 16 years old. So my mother abandoned a lot of the traditions, rituals, essentially became secular and apostate Jew, even abandoned a lot of Christian traditions and whatnot. Essentially, I got with my father, who wasn't Jewish. I think my dad's agnostic or atheist, something like that. Basically, my point is that my mom did not care about keeping up with the rituals, traditions, etc. Though she is still considered halakhically Jewish, she doesn't have anything to do with the Jewish religion, the politics of it, the culture, nothing. Okay, so she essentially fully assimilated into secular society, much to my grandmother's contempt. But my mom is her own person, so yeah. Now, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. My parents are both retired military. Okay, my mom, Army, my dad in the Marine Corps. And during missions and whatnot, or even summer breaks especially, I'd want to come to grandma's house, right? She was my everything. Okay, my grandmother, I was her favorite grandson. right? And that's saying a lot coming from 10 children. There was 60, 70 cousins and whatnot. Like it was, yeah. So big family. But I was my grandmother's favorite, right? Um, a lot of people think that it got passed down to me. My mom was the favorite of the 10, obviously being the baby of the 10. She got spoiled the most, and of course, that passed down to me. I'm the firstborn of the last child. So, but again, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. Every summer, I stayed with her during an entire school year. One time I wanted to be near her. She was my first love. All right. Um while I was with her, she would teach me about my Jewish roots and history and customs and even Hebrew, even enrolled me in a Jewish day school. Um and then unfortunately in 2005 my grandmother passed away. Okay. It was one of the hardest blows I've ever had to deal with in my life. And to some extent, I'm still trying to deal with. They say life goes on, but I beg to differ. You know what I mean? There's a piece of you that dies along with a loved one, if you're really that close to them. Anyway, so later on, I joined the military myself at the age of 17 years old. Okay, following in my parents' footsteps, essentially. Um, I became interested, right, in theology. Okay, basic training. You know, all you had to do was discuss politics, family, and religion, right? On the weekends when it was kind of our day off, right? You didn't have a TV in there. This was before cell phones and whatnot. All you had was cleaning your rifle, becoming really good at making hospital corners in the dorms, and getting to know your fellow future airmen, right? So I became very curious about different religious beliefs, and that carried on after I graduated basic military training. I enrolled in college at UT Martin, and I took theology. And there I read the New Testament 4 times. I read the Quran. I've read the Bhagavad Gita's. And of course, I read the Torah. Now, upon studying all these different religions, you know, I noticed a pattern as I explained before. Um, Everybody thinks that their guy is the guy, right? God speaks to one man. That one man tries to convince everyone else that God essentially spoke to him. So, it brought me back to the Torah, right? Where 3 million people hearing the voice of God, that is our claim as Jews, right? And my grandmother believed that with all her heart and soul, as did her mother, etc., etc. So I retired and came back home to the Midwest, where I currently reside. And I attended Beth Yehuda, right? This came back to my Jewish roots. And I had a daughter. And one day, my daughter became interested in reading the Torah in front of people and potentially becoming a rabbi. Right? And one of the rabbis there told my daughter that, in a polite way, you know, it's Wasn't anything negative, but of course, in Orthodoxy, women can't become rabbis. Right? So, this particular rabbi informed my daughter politely that, you know, there are other options available to a young lady such as herself. Um, why would anybody want to become a rabbi, etc., etc. And later on, my daughter asked me, Dad, was that rabbi right? Could I never become a rabbi if I wanted to? Now, this is probably the most memorable part of me being a parent, because I faced a dilemma. Do I tell her that from the Orthodox point of view, no, I'm sorry, you're a female, women can't be rabbis? Or do I tell her what I really meant from the heart? And that is that if you want to be something, go do it. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise, not even me. I'm a big proponent of speaking life into the next generation, our children. And I don't believe in holding them back. So it was at that moment that I decided that I was going to leave the Orthodox movement. Now, I started to look into the conservative movement, joined a conservative shul, and my daughter essentially loves it, Of course, I was taken back by the fact of the mixed seating, but the rabbi of the shul wanted me to go through a Judaism 101 course, just from the conservative movement's perspective, right? So I did. And after that was done, I requested to go into the mikveh. I wanted to take on this new Jewish identity myself, and I went into the mikveh and came out, and here I am, right? So yes, I halakhically was born Jewish. When I say I converted, it really means I left one movement for another, and apologize for the word choice. I could say I switched, from Orthodoxy to conservative, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, that was my turning point, because before then, again, my mom had assimilated, and she remains so, an apostate Jew. Doesn't care about, Hanukkah, doesn't do any of that stuff. As a matter of fact, last year she put up a Christmas tree and, that whole thing. So, and my mother had 3 children. I'm the oldest of 3. Okay, I got 2 younger sisters. I am the only one that is embracing the Jewish identity and keeping it going. Okay, so I went from Orthodoxy to conservative. And for me, personally, I love it, right? So that's my story for my new subscribers, my new viewers. Again, it's something that was a turning point. I started to take Judaism seriously, right? But yeah, meant a lot to me. Sorry that was long-winded, but I wanted to again let everybody know, especially new viewers, know who I am, my background, that sort of thing. All right. Hopefully that answers the question. Next question. What is your opinion on the black Israelites? Are they on to something or just flat out wrong? I would say they're flat out crazy. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because I spoke on this topic before, okay? And my answer remains the same, okay? They are a cult, and stay away from them, okay? Now, that's not to take away from the fact that there are African Americans and Africans that are Jews, that have Jewish blood in them, right? I'm a prime example, right? But they are very racist, okay? I seen them on the street corners lashing out against white people, calling them devils and all this other stuff, and trying to get black people to follow their movements, come back to their Jewish roots, etc., etc., right? I don't believe that God cares about race at all. I don't believe that God cares about race. It is the deeds of a person that makes them who they are, not someone's skin color, okay? They claim that the Hispanics are a tribe and the Native Americans are another tribe and the African Americans are from the tribe of Judah and the Africans are from another tribe, and etc., etc. Everyone is part of the 12 tribes except white people, right? The funny thing is if you ask the Native Americans, the Cubans, the Puerto Ricans, about being part of the 12 tribes, they will have no idea what the heck you're talking about. And so it goes back into a few presentations I did before, why I essentially converted to Judaism. They are using past theory, okay? Charismatic cult leader comes to a group of people and essentially makes up an entire history, okay? Because you go to the Native Americans, go to the Hispanics, go to any of these groups and just ask them, hey, are you one of the 12 tribes of Israel? And they'll say, no, I know my history. So the Black Hebrew Israelite movement is essentially making up an entire history. And it doesn't make any sense. And in order to protect their credibility, they're using, instead of a gap like a flood, a natural disaster, etc., what they're using is the white people stole your history, your everything from you. So they believe they're doing a civic duty by giving people back their tradition, which is why you can't go to your grandparents or great grandparents and ask, hey, are we part of the 12 tribes? They have no idea what you're talking about, right? Furthermore, the movement's leader, a guy by the name of Frank Cherry, okay, he dismissed anti-Semitism, claimed that the earth was a giant cube. Not kidding, you can go look this up. He believed that the earth was a square, okay? He stated some prophecies that never came true. One of them being that Jesus would come back in the year 2000 and lead a race war in which white people will be slaves. Need I say more? I mean, we all know that that didn't happen. So the leader of the Hebrew Israelite movement was a vicious anti Semite, wanted to incite a race war, and it's all just based on a cult. They're using race in order to push an agenda, and they're reading the Torah through a racist lens, claiming that white people are descendants of Esau and that they're evil and all of this stuff. And no, no, absolutely not. They're flat out crazy. Okay? Period. Next question. What's your take on Orthodox conversion that have been performed to the full extent of halakha by Beit Dins that's not recognized? I ask because I'm in that situation, and the only one who would recognize that conversion is through the RA Beit Din conservative. So, as I've stated time and time again, the Orthodox conversions are very tricky. Okay, there's a list. You can go look it up yourself, called the Ateem list on ateem.org, I believe it is, that the rabbinate in Israel will recognize. There's a list of rabbis that they will recognize if they do the conversion. Okay? And if your rabbi isn't on the list, your conversion is as good as a reform or a conservative conversion. Right? Meaning they won't accept it. Okay? There's only 20 something rabbis that are on the actual list. Okay? That's why I push back on the notion that Orthodox conversions are accepted. Everyone accepts Orthodox conversion. Everyone, no. The truth is in the Orthodox realm, it's a cluster. It really is. Your conversion can be valid one day and invalidated the next. It can be accepted by one Orthodox rabbi and rejected by another Orthodox rabbi. It really just depends. Okay? Again, even in Israel, when the rabbinate approved individuals' conversions, they approved the conversions, they still chose not to give hundreds of people their certificates just last year. Just last year. I believe that the Orthodox movement are making conversions much more difficult than what it's supposed to be. Okay? It seems like you have to wait years, study, and almost become a rabbi yourself before you can essentially convert. Halakha states that you do not go into all of the laws, right? Because it'll overwhelm someone and turn them from a good path to a bad path. That is strictly what halakha states, right? As for the Beit Din, this is a major issue with Orthodox rabbis, with non-Orthodox Beit Dins, okay? They don't view them as kosher unless it's 3 males. Gotta be males. They all have to be observant up to the Orthodox standards, and they have to specialize in conversion. Okay? It has become highly political in the Orthodox realm. It's highly political. And here, the interesting thing from my experience, okay? If you ask the average Orthodox Jew about someone who is a Reformed Jew or a conservative Jew, typically the Orthodox Jew will accept them as Jews, right? They may be practicing something that I don't necessarily agree with, but they're still Jews nonetheless. It's the rabbis that will say, no, you're not Jewish, right? Based on their standards. My take is I have always encouraged, if someone is going to reform or convert, I always push a conservative conversion if at all possible. Okay? The reason is because, nothing against the reform movement. I think that they're great in the work that they do, but some reform conversions I have found take away things from Jewish law. For example, there are some that have done away with the mikveh, right? There are some that won't do the ritual circumcision, right? So some reform won't adhere to halakha when converting someone. So that I reject. They also allow patrilineal descent Jews, which I don't personally agree with, right? And then on the flip side of that, the Orthodox adds in things to halakha in Jewish law to benefit them, right? So, for example, when you go to an Orthodox rabbi and you say, I want to convert, right? And they push you away 3 times. That's not in halakha. That's not Jewish law. I don't even know why that's a thing. Okay? And then they make you, study. They make you wait a year. Some come to your home, make sure that you have a kosher kitchen. You got to move to this community. You got to do this and this and this and jump through all of these different hoops. And then come to find out that when you're all done, the Orthodox rabbi in the next city over may not even accept you as Jewish after all that. So it's really a cluster. You have reform that is taking away things from Jewish law, and then you have the Orthodox that are adding in things to Jewish law. And so that's why I encourage a conservative conversion. It's continuing the original path, sticking with tradition, and the organization in Israel, should you choose to go to Israel and make Aliyah, there is the Sochnut, which verifies or validates reform and conservative conversions, and it's usually done like that, right? An Orthodox conversion, they're approved by the Rabbanut, and it is highly political. You have to be up to their standards, and because they have this notion that, the more primitive a person is, the more religious they are, it's really a cluster, right? In the 1960s, they dug up someone that had converted to Judaism and was buried in a Jewish cemetery because they invalidated the conversion after the person had passed away because the rabbi did something that the rabbinut didn't agree with. It's highly political. My thoughts are, if you want a Orthodox conversion, go through, one that's recognized by the, I'd say, the Orthodox Union, Chicago, New York. They're usually located in bigger cities. Relocate there, find a kosher Beit Din up to the Orthodox standards, and then convert through them. That'd be your best way to go. But if you went through a Beit Din and you went through the mikveh and you adhere to halakha and accepted the Torah, you're already Jewish in my book. So it's really up to you at that point. Okay? Next question. Would you please explain how do Karaite Jews follow Torah? Are they considered Jews? Thank you. So the Karaite movement essentially started with Anan ben David. Anan ben David basically didn't get a job in his day, at his time, as one of the top leaders, okay? Head honcho, head rabbi, whatever you want to call it, right? Now, when families fight, it gets bad. Am I right? In America, one of the most devastating and war that we've fought, in which over 1 million American lives were taken, wasn't World War II. It wasn't the Great War, World War I. It was actually the Civil War. When families fight, it's bad, right? So basically, Anan ben David went up for a role to become the head rabbi, and he didn't get it. Okay, so what did Anan do when he didn't get the job? Basically accused the whole system of being corrupt, right? That system being the rabbinical laws, right? He took some writings that were in circulation from the Essenes and the Sadducees. He rejected the oral tradition and rabbinic interpretation. Basically, his statement, and I'm paraphrasing, was, if I can't be the lead rabbi, then there aren't going to be any rabbis, right? Trying to bring the whole system down. Essentially a sore loser, right? So this is when the Karaite movement came about. It was in Babylon, and it grew from there, okay? Today there are Karaite Jews, but there really aren't many. A lot of Karaite Jews today you see mainly on social media and whatnot. Typically their parents aren't Karaite Jews, okay? The idea that the rabbis are all corrupt and whatnot, and, you know, as part of a conspiracy theory, can be attractive to some, right? Karaites weren't atheists or anything. They just basically said that there was no oral Torah, right? They rejected the oral tradition, you know. So obviously that presents a big problem for them, right? See, when a Christian or a Muslim claims that there's no oral Torah, or it's a lie, or whatever the case may be, right? Well, it's fine, because they don't even keep the written Torah, right? Go figure. But the Karaites had to come up with a way to keep the written Torah, because the written Torah is so vague, right? So they had to come up with a way to keep the laws, right? Keep the written Torah. So what did they do? You guessed it. They came up with their own oral tradition, right? So one in which, for example, observing Shabbat, Karaite Jews believed that you were supposed to observe it in complete darkness, right? Eat cold food and whatnot. Like you weren't allowed to essentially, do a lot of things, and they came up with their own method, their own tradition, right? They came up with an oral tradition that ironically is very close to mainstream Jews' rabbinical oral tradition, right? So, again, the Torah is so vague that you have to have some kind of explanation. Now, some Karaite Jews don't like to be associated with Anan ben David, but there is no literature on them prior to the 8th century. Okay? I mean, Anan lived from, I want to say, 715 to 795, 796, somewhere in there. And it isn't until after his death that Karaites essentially become a thing, right? I mean, Karaite Jews claim that the oral tradition didn't come from Moses, but I've always been confused on that. Karaite Jews didn't exist prior to the 8th century. You know, if the oral tradition was a lie, then why didn't Karaite Judaism show up sooner? Right? I mean, they try to link themselves to the Sadducees, but there is no evidence of that. You know, to me, is it not curious that Anan only had these insights after being passed over as a leader, right? All of a sudden, after you get passed on, Judaism was wrong, right? It's all about, to me, it's all about Anan ben David's desire for prestige and power. Okay, so that's my opinion on them. As far as, you know, are they considered Jews? I'm not the gatekeeper. To me, they accept the Torah, and they may have their own interpretation of how to keep the Torah and do the laws and whatnot. So, if you're asking me, are they considered Jews? I'm gonna say yes, but with a huge caveat, and that is that it's kind of they're kind of conspiracy theorists in terms of when it comes to the rabbinical side of things, the rabbinical laws. They claim that it's all corrupt and the system, and it's all because Anan ben David didn't get a job or the job that he wanted. So, yeah. Last question. Shalom, Aaron. I hope this find you and your family blessed. I am a black single mother of 2 who is currently undergoing a reform conversion process. I was unable to find a conservative synagogue in the UK. Wow, shout out to the UK. I wanted to ask your advice on how I can handle some of the discriminatory behavior I am facing when attending services. Despite attending weekly for months, my children and I often go through a police-like interrogation to enter the synagogue. I also feel like I am looked at differently because I am a single mother. My daughters are 4 and 12, and long term I do see myself getting married. Please, can you provide some advice on how I move forward with my plans for a Jewish home and family given the circumstances? Overall, it has not impacted my relationship with Hashem, and my children and I are growing stronger in connection and faith. Basically, my question is, how can someone with taboo circumstances overcome judgment in order to be fruitful in conversion and ultimately having a Jewish home and family? Thank you for the work you do. It has been a great support for my journey to returning home. Wow, that is a great question. I'll start my answer by shedding some light on something. Some people feel like when they convert to Judaism, it's all sunshine and rainbows, right? We're just one big happy family. As much as I like to think that, our very name implies otherwise. Okay? You are joining Israel. Okay? Think about what that means. It literally means, it translates to one who wrestles with God. Okay? The Torah even calls us stubborn, right? Calls us stiff-necked people. Amkashar, stiff-necked people, right? It is forbidden for Jews to judge other Jews. Okay? But it happens. It is forbidden for people to ask whether they're a convert or born Jewish. But it happens, right? I can't tell you how many emails I've received about me not being Jewish anymore because I left Orthodoxy, right? Yet I am still here, 700 plus subscribers strong. Thank you all. I'm happy to hear that it's not impacting your relationship with Hashem, right? My advice is to trust people to be themselves. Trust a liar to lie to you. Trust a thief to steal from you. Trust a judgmental person to judge you. Right? But trust in your ability to see them well. Meaning, if someone shows you who they are, believe them. Right? Know them when you see them. So, to answer the question more directly, don't let your circumstances define you. Right? Get away from people in your life that is hating you, on you. Get away from people that is judging you. Get away from them. Right? I will say that if it feels too much to bear, judgment is coming from everywhere, all sides, then you need to get you and your children out of that environment. Because judgment and negativity are contagious. And you don't want that to be instilled in your children's minds as if that's okay to do. Right? I surround myself with positive people. And I've had to go from synagogue to synagogue in order to find it. Right? Some believe that, oh, you're black. How are your grandparents, Holocaust survivors? You're black. How are you Jewish? Etc. Etc. Some people are so close-minded, that sometimes I'll give them an answer and sometimes I'll say, go expand your horizons. You have a very limited idea in your head, right? Because they can't fathom that my great-grandmother was a white European. My grandmother met a black man, gave birth to my mother. My mother met another black man, gave birth to me. So I'm a quarter European, Ashkenazi Jew, But I will say this. Being Jewish doesn't mean that everyone will accept you and you are free from judgment. Right? In many cases, it means just the opposite, actually. Right? You are black, which means you have to deal with racism, and you're becoming Jewish, which means you have to deal with anti-Semitism. Right? So, as it states in Halakha, we are meant to repair this world. And sometimes our job isn't easy. Right? As it states, we aren't meant to receive an abundance of good things happen to us, lest we be led astray from our place in the world to come. All right? I would say that if you can push through, right? Ignore the judgment and push through, and if you believe that the life on the other side is better for you and your daughters, then keep on going. But if you see any effects on your children in terms of bullying, in terms of their self-esteem, their self-confidence, their identity, then that's not the place that you need to be. It is not the place you need to be, and you need to find somewhere else to go. Again, I was Orthodox, and going from an Orthodox shul to an Orthodox shul, I was and a lot of times the only black man in there, the only black person in there. And as black people, the looks that we get sometimes gives us anxiety, makes us feel like we don't belong. I've been there, right? You have to shop around. Find a place that is good for you and your children. Again, if it's just a small handful, keep on going. Ignore them and keep on going. And let Hashem deal with those individuals that are judging. I always tell people, whether you have tattoos or you been to prison, whatever the case may be, it's not too late to accept the Torah. And I always advise people to get out of the way when people are trying to redeem themselves. Get out of the way. Right? Again, that's my big issue with the Orthodox movement. When someone comes and they're trying to convert and they ask for guidance, and that Orthodox rabbi, for some crazy reason, decides that I want to turn you away 3 times. Well, what happens if that 3rd time that you turn them away, they go and spiral down because their self-esteem is wrecked, or their self-confidence, and they were rejected by you? What happens when they turn to idol worship? What happens when they turn to drinking, feeling like they're not good enough, Lord forbid, commit suicide? That falls on you then, because they came to you for help and you rejected them. My advice is to get away from people, family members included. Get away from people that are hating, that are judging you, if it's too overwhelming. I had to do it. I'm on this platform, and I just talked about how my grandmother had 10 children. My mom is the baby. I have 50-something cousins. Not one of them supports this channel. Not one of them supports what I'm doing. And when I went into the military, it was my family that, you don't need to join the military, that's the white man's war, and yada yada yada, right? I had to do it. I had to separate myself from it. And again, I still get email, yeah, you're not Jewish and you need to shut this channel down, and you know, you left Orthodoxy and, you know, all of this. No, no. So you're constantly going to get human beings that are just assholes. And there's no getting around it. But you got to stay true to who you are. And I never look personally at shul as a social gathering, as a social event, right? I go to pray with fellow Jews, but I'm not looking to make friends and all of this. No. My advice is to keep going. Keep going. Your reward on the other side, if you do decide to keep going, your reward is going to be something special. I know how it is as, being black and being Jewish. Trust me, I know. It's a different beast, right? But keep going. Because what you learn, the identity that you take on, that closeness and that connection that you feel with Hashem is just going to grow and grow and grow, right? And you make the decision that you rather stand with Hashem and have the world hate you than stand with the world and have Hashem be disappointed that you never unlocked your full potential. Keep going. And I'm right here with you. And I'll be happy to give you a shout out on my channel and say welcome to the tribe when you're all done. So, that being said, if you found this presentation helpful and informative, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Do me an even greater favor and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate all the support that I am given. Be good to yourselves. Be good to others. And until the next episode, you all take care.